Hello, Keith Marchiano, Senior Executive Coach at Pax8 Academy. Welcome to another episode of Result Selling Framework, the podcast version. As many of you know, I'm a huge baseball fan. I'm really a fan of most sports in general. In sports, there is a term. It's called legend. This is somebody who changed the game and the way we recognize their sport. Michael Jordan, Michael Phelps, Wayne Gretzky, Muhammad Ali, just a few names to give you examples. I spent 15 years in the MSP space before coming to Pax8 Academy as a coach. Today, I get to interview a legend in the MSP space, Rex Frank, VP of Academy here at Pax8. I also get to see on a daily basis why he was such a visionary in the industry as Rex continues to challenge me personally around result selling framework and taking this to a different level to be able to give to the main focus, which is our partners. Give back, always improving the experience that they get, helping them learn more. Rex worked in the operations and technical side in the IT services industry before he started C-level operations in 2010. Hey, I got to listen to Rex a few times in industry events when I was in the IT services space. So I thought, what a great topic to bring him into the Result Selling Framework podcast to discuss tips around attending industry events. So let's get on with the podcast. Hey, Rex Frank, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Yeehaw.
You're traveling. Tell everybody where you are and give everybody your intro, and don't forget your one fun fact.
Yeah, I don't have my normal background. I'm down at my dad's, visiting my dad's in Sun City,
Nice.
down near Phoenix, Arizona. It's been beautiful outside. I tried to turn facing the golf course out here, but that didn't work out from the cameras and the lights perspectives. That kind of bums me out. Fun fact about myself, I don't know if you know this one, Keith, but in the 90s, I went to a solution selling course. It was called FIRST, right? FIRST, Foundations, Issues, Results, Solutions, Teaming, this whole questioning methodology where you do a lot more listening and a lot less talking, and until it comes time to offer up kind of that solution. And I'm the only one that had been through this guy's program. The assignment was a family needed to buy a car, and the husband wanted a sports car, the mom wanted a minivan, and you're supposed to guide them through solving this issue so that they could pick the car they're going to buy. And he said I was the only one that sold them both cars. So I kind of wear that little feather in my cap, which is a lot of fun. Quick intro of myself. In the 80s, I started as a tech. In the 90s, got promoted into that service manager role. Through the 2000s was sort of me coming into my own as really a service executive at three different larger partners. And then in 2010, I founded C-level operations, and really to serve that niche of coaching that service manager, right? That technician promoted into that service manager role, how to stop being a tech and really to start being a service executive by taking ownership of getting operations in order. And then the financial benchmark coaching came into play. And in 2021, C-level was acquired by Pax8, and really we became the foundation for Pax8 Academy. It's hard to believe 4 years later, here we are. With what it is. I remember Keith and Jeremy and James worked so hard to create the result selling framework, and I mean to use your baseball metaphor, just completely knocking it out of the park. Partners are getting a ton of value out of it. So thank you for your hard work on that and creating this podcast. Oh my gosh, we about 2 years ago, I went to all of our peer group. I went to one of our peer group meetings and went into each peer group to ask about how people would want to learn about solution selling and the result selling framework. And overwhelmingly, podcast was the number one thing that was asked for. And that was kind of unprimed by me. Just every group individually pulled that out. So thank you again to everybody that's been working on this podcast.
Yeah, we keep taking it to the next level, right? So you're right. Learning is changed. Go back to when you took that first course, you take it in person, you read a book. Certainly. changes the way you're learning. And certainly, like you look at Audible, changed the way we read books. Now you listen to them when you're on the go, whether you're going for a run or a walk or just on your treadmill or driving to work back and forth. So you can actually learn as you go. So I do like this concept myself. So
if you're driving right now, honk your horn.
That's right. Yeah. It's, from a standpoint, I always say I have too much fun. I have too much fun doing what I'm doing. So that's why I keep doing it. Right. So I want to ask you a question, kind of impromptu, is like, man, you've been in the IT services world for a while. Like, holy smokes, the change. I mean, I've seen a lot of changes since 2005. Like, describe that change, right, from the 80s until now, just the way technology and the IT services industry really has changed.
Boy, I think I could count them at maybe 5 or 6 major changes in the way we work in this industry. I remember when we made a lot of margin on selling computers and computer products, and the installation services were all free because we made so much margin. And then as the margin dried up, we had to shift towards selling services and becoming services companies. And then this networking thing came out, and we had to learn how to become a networking companies. Well, then those networks need to be managed, and we had to learn how to do this managed services thing right through the 2000s timeframe, and then this cloud revolution happened and digital transformation, and we ended up moving all of our partners into the cloud, and then we all had to recast ourselves as security professionals, and now the whole AI transformation is in the beginning stages. AI is not necessarily beginning, but partners are in the beginning stages of trying to figure out how to not only leverage it for own efficiencies, but how to take it to their partner community and how to monetize it. And I said this the other day to somebody. It's like, if you were to ask our partners what they're best at, they're probably going to say technology or something along those lines. But I would argue what they've actually become best at is transforming their business models. And I think we're perfectly positioned to do that once again, with this agentic AI or however it ends up coming to be. I'm excited about that next transformation.
Yeah, we're just still, I'm still waiting for the Jetsons, like flying cars and things like that too, right?
Absolutely. Every day. I love that. This was probably 10, 15 years ago, but they came out with some show about Star Trek and how much of the technology that they invented for the show in the 60s has actually come true now.
Yeah, flip phones, right?
Yeah,
came from Star Trek. Jetsons were the first ones to show Zoom meetings, right? Video
Absolutely.
Zoom. Yeah. So yeah, that's the one thing I love about this industry is like, it's always changing. You've always got to stay sharp and on things. One thing I fell in love with sales was like, hey, I always was perfecting my craft. When I got into the IT world, it was like understanding the ever changing, complex world of technology in itself and how businesses are using it, right?
Yeah, one thing I use often when I'm talking to those technicians thinking about making that transition into a management or leadership role is I remind them that, hey, everything you learn in technology has like a 3 to maybe 5 year shelf life, and you have to kind of relearn everything. So literally everything to do your job has to be cycled out 30 to, somewhere between 20 and 33%, right? But everything that you learn as a leader or a manager really just compounds on itself for a lifetime. And it's kind of the same thing about being a sales professional, right? Like how to do the questioning and the listening to understand the problems and solution to align with resolving those problems, and how to have those conversations is something that just builds and builds and builds on itself.
Oh, absolutely. I find it interesting that, from a standpoint like your sales education background, from being on the technical side and kind of getting thrusted into that. So through your learning and such, like I always kind of coach partners is like, hey, I always felt like I had an unfair advantage when I was selling managed services because I was going up against technical people who didn't have sales backgrounds, but you did. From a standpoint, like when you were in that MSP space and such, what were some of the biggest challenges you had around finding new clients and kind of, building that business upside?
Well, referrals is where they all come from. The question is, are you just sitting back and waiting for one to fly in the window, or are you doing something to cultivate that referral relationship? I think that's a big part of it. Coming from that service delivery side, there was a point early in my career where I really kind of felt like I was the most important part of the company because if we didn't service the clients, they wouldn't stay, and then we wouldn't have any business. And that was such an immature view. And I would imagine that some percentage of the industry, is in that view right now. And it took me learning about sales and participating in the selling process and doing the sales really to develop that understanding that there's a whole nother book of magic that the salespeople carry. And it's a lot of work to get from that scope of work that often a technician puts together to a signature on a contract, right? And that's all those interpersonal skills that usually engineers don't have. I just want to get one thing out there. I don't know that I've had an opportunity to say this enough. As a service manager, I remember, really before we had a full-time commissioned salesperson, if I wasn't able to keep up with service delivery, I could kind of ask the owner to slow down. Like, hey, we're getting a little run over here. Can you sell a little less? And like, there was always accommodated. And I remember the first time, Kevin was the full-time salesperson's name. And he said, I was feeling a little overwhelmed. He was doing a great job, right? And I felt like asking him to slow down. And I remember the reaction. It really threw me back on my heels because he's like, I live and die on these commissions. If I slow down, you're taking money out of my wallet. You're taking food out of my kids' mouths, right? And I had to really mature as a service manager so that I understood sales pipeline and staffing and resource management, so that I would never say that. And I still see it happening a lot in some of our partners that are going through that, bringing a full-time salesperson on transition.
Great story. Yeah, I've had that said to me a couple of times too. It's like, whoa, there's no taking the foot off the gas. Like,
right.
Your foot's on the gas. We can't stop the momentum. Got to keep finding business. Like,
I had no understanding of the effort and finances that went into getting a marketing flywheel spinning, where it starts throwing off the leads that a full-time salesperson needs, and that they need to close them to hit their commission targets, which creates the revenue achievements for the company. Like, I remember not having any understanding of how all that was all interconnected.
Man, it's certainly, I coach this is from a standpoint of, what you do over a 30-day period. It's a rule of 30. Whatever you do over a 30-day period will reflect in your pipeline 60 to 120 days from now. And if you're relentless with prospecting, next 60 to 120 days are going to look good. Conversely, if you take that foot off the gas, you're going to see some either roller coaster or dry spells, right? And for sales professionals, they're not going to stop or slow down. They got to keep on going. They got to keep consistently and relentlessly prospecting.
Service managers are used to owner-led sales, where the owners they're used to the roller coaster where they get a moment to breathe, right? Because the owner is too busy involved in the project management, so they're not doing any selling. And the project's finally done, they realize there's a dry lead funnel. So then they go back to work, and the service department gets a moment to catch up. But man, if you got a professional sales department in there, you never get a chance to breathe.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We have a good saying. It's like, hey, our job is to make operations and service cry a little bit, right? Make them uneasy.
Yes.
So what inspired you to start C-Level?
I don't know if inspired is the right word. a lot of people think I owned an MSP, but I never did. I was always sort of that number two person at the company. And I honestly really liked it that way. Like if I'm a Star Trek Next Generation fan, and it's like I never saw myself as Picard. I saw myself as Will Riker, right? The one that makes it happen. And I honestly didn't want to carry the risk associated with business ownership. I didn't want to deal with sales. That was something that was foreign to me. I always thought, man, if I started my own MSP, how would I ever get a client, right? And then I just had a lot of other owners in the industry asking me if I could work with their service manager, peer group members and stuff, and other people I met from the ConnectWise user group community. We were just asking me if they could engage me, even though I worked for an MSP, if they could engage me to help their service manager, learn how to stop being a tech and start being a service leader. And there was enough of those questions that I remember talking to my dad. It's kind of fitting I'm visiting my dad right now, but it was at Thanksgiving, and I was like, Dad, I'm thinking about starting a business. I'm not saying I need help right now, but if I needed help making a house payment or something, would you be there for me? And I remember he kind of really gave me that dad side eye, and like, what are you asking? But he did commit that, if I really was in trouble, he would help. And I'm proud to say I never did ask anybody for help, including my dad. So that was kind of a win. But I was able to get the company going and find enough clients. Apparently, I did know how to sell. Although it's funny, I remember being 5 or 6 years in. We had, I don't know, 10 employees or something at the time, other coaches, and I remember feeling like, wait a minute. I've sold $1 million a year in revenue or whatever, but I don't ever remember selling anything. And I never really asked anybody that's a sales professional like you, Keith, like how do you respond to that? Like, I have $1 million revenue stream, but I don't remember selling anything.
That's because, most people, like from a standpoint, like really from a sales standpoint, you really have some sort of intrinsic value going on for what you're doing. And I always had the mindset was I was solving problems. And I coach MSPs that, especially the technical owners, like I haven't met an engineer that wasn't focused on solving somebody's problem. And I felt the same way, especially in this space. There's a problem, needs to be fixed in somebody's business. That's what I'm doing. And if I'm providing the value and reality, helping their business, that's kind of that intrinsic motivator to me. It's like, hey, I made somebody's life better, right? It varies for different salespeople. That was mine.
Yeah, I mean, I have a file cabinet full of signed contracts, right? But anyway, yeah, and I just sort of fell into it, and I remember not having the operations or the sales operations guide or any of those guides that we have now. I didn't have any of that. I just had it in my head, and I remember I'd be on the phone with some of those early service manager coaches, Scott Hamlin's. If you ever talked to Scott on the program, his service manager, like I'd be like, okay, next week we're going to talk about triage, and just with all this confidence, and then thinking, crap, I got to figure out and document the triage process before I get on that call next week, right? And there was a 2 years of just. Spent a lot more time brain dumping operational best practices into the documents, but we just stuck with it. And as Ken Spunsler came on, and Chris Butler and David Shafford and Jay Hokie, as they all came on, a big part of their roles was, creating the ops guide when it was time to work on something we hadn't created something before.
That's an awesome story. Well, for everybody listening, that's where a lot of the stuff we teach in operations. I can tell you right now, the sales stuff, results selling framework was just like you said, Rex. I just started just dumping ideas out of my head onto paper. Just like, all right, now let's organize it. Let's focus on, hey, prospecting over here, how to sell better here, right? It's like you need to get it on paper and things documented. That will give you the direction, the roadmap, if you will.
Yep.
Awesome story. Thanks for sharing that. All right. So brought you on the program to talk about industry events, like talk about our industry changing, like very few events, decade and a half ago to compare to one now, where you can go to one pretty much every week if you wanted to almost. So, with Beyond, Pax8 Beyond, right around the corner, it's amazing about how many industry events there are, but it's also can be overwhelming. Let's start with this first. If I'm a Pax8 partner, why should I come to Beyond in the first place, to Pax8 Beyond? Let's start there.
Well, I mean, it's almost a given that you should come. My bigger question is, who else on your team should you bring? Like, I go to conference after conference after conference, representing thought leadership or representing Pax8 or whatever. And I see the same MSP owners over and over and over. And I kind of look at their companies, and they're all generally stuck at a plateau. And but when I start seeing them with other people from their organization, and then ultimately other people from their organization and not them, that's when I notice that there's a big transformational change or a plateau that was overcome in their companies. So that's why I was kind of thinking, it's not whether you should come, because that's a given. It's who else should come, who else is going to benefit by the agenda that particular conference has, whether it's ours or somebody else's. So make sure you understand that agenda and decide who else in my company is going to benefit, because that's a big part of transitioning the roles, taking the hats off of the owner or the existing senior leadership team and putting those hats onto other people in the organization.
Great tip, right? There's tip number one out of the way. Yeah, I agree. It's like, from a standpoint of like looking at the agenda, it was something I did in my MSP. There's a lot of service stuff. I went to IT Nation a lot. And it was like, okay, I'm going to focus on the leadership, and I want to focus on the growth, the VCIO, and building out that process. But when it comes to service delivery and such, it's like, I went to, your sessions and other sessions, and it was like, I'm getting it, but from a standpoint, I need to bring in my service manager. And I started bringing him along every year, and it was like, holy smokes. Then I saw the changes going on in service delivery. I love that point. So what other, like, from if I'm an owner, or let's just say, it doesn't matter what role you're in, but coming to an event, like, what tips would you give to people coming to an industry event? Like, I always kind of say, what would you do before the event, during the event, and then after the event? What are some of the tips that you would give people here?
Well, a big part of deciding which event to go to is looking at that agenda, looking at what vendors are going to be there. Going there with the mindset that I'm here to learn. I'm here to spend time with the vendors, learning what's going on, what's new. I'm here to build relationships, right? It's amazing. There's a difference in the success factors of the people that go to those conferences building relationships, and the ones that just go there to sit in some conferences. And I think another big part is clear your calendar. Because it's so distracting to be able to skip the sessions that you're there to see because you have a pre-scheduled meeting, right? I have a coffee mug on my desk that says, "Congratulations, you survived another meeting that could have been an email," right? And if we're making the investment, the travel, the hotel, the T&E associated with going to that event, then you should be committed to being at that event and building those relationships.
That's a great point. Just like from a standpoint, like, this is actually, if you're like, it's almost like, when you're a first time parent and getting somebody to watch your kid for the first time, you're scared to death. Even if it's your parents watching the kid who raised you, it's still spooky. And I think it's a great opportunity for the owner, especially when you're there, to like, hey, let's see if we can develop leadership, trial by fire. Like, nobody's going to die. Building's not going to burn down, right? So, give it some time for you to focus on working on the business. I love that tip. That's fantastic.
Yeah, we have a lot of peer group members that, they want to go to a conference, and maybe they don't have the leadership team quite in place yet that they're confident about. And they'll ask another peer group member to step in and, make a couple key decisions if something is needed because they need to go focus on this other thing. they're investing in attending, because it is an investment. When you're have all that travel and conference expenses and everything else, you should be getting that return.
Yeah, totally agree. There's a lot of shiny objects at these events, and there's between vendor pavilions and different sessions. From a standpoint, it can be overload, right? It can be info overload and wind up being like nothing, no results from it because it's so much information. Like, what are some ideas and tips around that to prepare and plan and execute, if you will?
Well, like I said, understand what vendors are going to be there. Maybe have a meeting with your teams to see if there's any of those particular vendors that they'd like you to have a conversation with, because you could definitely find some of those gems that if you add a solution to your stack, it's going to make a material gross margin difference in the way you do business, because it's offsetting labor costs, right? And that's why we buy most of those tools. So definitely go there armed and ready. I will tell you, this was a lot easier when I had less gray in my beard, but there's a lot of business and relationship building that happens after hours in the bar. Whether you drink or not, there's a lot that goes on down there. And it used to be a lot easier for me to stay up till 12 or close the bar down and then be back down at 7:30 for breakfast or whatever it was. I still do it. I still commit to it. But I definitely find it harder now. But there's just so much value in relationship building that happens down in that bar after hours. So
Yeah, 100% agree.
that's a big benefit of registering early enough and booking your hotel early enough to be on property.
Oh, totally agree. And that's probably the biggest benefit that we can get as an MSP is talking to others. Oh, you talk about one hand up, one hand down. I always kind of went in it as like, hey, I'm going to talk to people who've been doing it longer than me, more mature than I am in a certain area, and talk to them to find out, hey, how are you doing it? And people are willing to share. At the same point, if somebody else that's just getting started or not as mature as me, like a lot of people, I got into conversations about sales naturally, like I'm willing to help out that person as well. It's a very giving industry, these events. I totally agree with the bar scene. I would be totally exhausted by the time I was done, but yeah. No, but you get so much info from people that have been there, done that before, right? Have the battle scars in certain areas.
Well, I don't know if I should say this out loud, but people tend to loosen up a little bit too and say what they're really thinking.
And very true. Very true. Excellent. Any other tips for the audience when it comes to attending the industry events, things to learn? I'm going to have one more topic that a little bit off topic.
My favorite hotel room tip is, how when you try to pull the blinds shut and they don't quite close all the way and you got that stream of light that seems to always find your eyeball? The pants clothes hangers, you can use those to clip the blinds shut, those little clips on the clothes hangers. So that's one of my favorite tips.
That's definitely a Rex pro tip. You told me that a couple years ago. I was like, holy crap, why didn't I think of this sooner? It's like perfect. I'd use it all the time now. I want to, again, last question here, and again, since you're really a visionary from a lot of aspects, and we were talking a little bit about AI, what short or long-term benefits do you see AI providing the MSP space?
I think we're all playing with the generative AI, right? The chat GPTs and the co-pilots, and we're all just kind of learning and kind of realizing that, whoa, this can actually do some really cool stuff. But there's a lot of other AI technologies out there. The thing that comes to mind for me is sort of that Gartner, I forget what the curve is called, where there's a hype cycle, and then when you start using it, it goes way down, and then it finds its way back up. But they chart. There's a 2024 and 2025 version of it that charts where each of the different AI kind of schools of thought are on that line. Look at that stuff, because you'll see where it's really ready for mainstream adoption in your partner base and how to monetize it. I think data and AI, a lot of MSPs don't really have data engineers yet. I think they need to be thinking about getting data engineers because all that AI, all that artificial intelligence is based on the quality of your data. And the more, not only us as MSPs, but we helped all of our end clients move their data to all these different cloud environments, right? So where exactly are we going to have it learn about our own company so that we can apply it to gain the efficiencies, but also to gain the insights into our prospects, gain the insights into our existing client community, and gain the insights to create agents that help our partners achieve better, better revenues themselves, better efficiency, reduce risk. And AI is going to help with all of that. And I think our partners are going to be writing and creating agents for their partners. And when they do that, they're going to want to monetize that by selling it to other MSPs, right? That's this whole agentic AI movement that's happening. And Pax8's trying to position our marketplace as the place for one MSP that creates an AI agent to sell it to another MSP that could leverage it. So this whole agentic AI marketplace thing is coming at Pax8, and we have a lot to learn. We have a lot to learn about intellectual property, how to create it, how to protect it, how to license it so other people can use it, how to modify our support organizations to be able to help another company that might license some technology from you, right? That's all really foreign to most of our partners now. So they'll have to get on board to figuring that out, and it's coming fast.
Yeah, I agree. If we go back, like, I don't know if it was the early 2010s or whatever, people started talking about the cloud, right? And it was like, there wasn't many, quick adoption in our industry from that because mostly small businesses probably weren't ready for it, but it was coming, right? So for those that are kind of thinking like, oh, I hear about this AI, people are using it, but it's not at its full strength yet. Very similar. If you just go back, a decade ago, just how quickly cloud adoption became relevant, and then how important it became when COVID hit in 2020, and those that were lagging behind in cloud, they were left behind. I think AI is just going way faster than that cloud adoption did.
Yeah, I mean, if mainstream adoption was 3 years away, half a year ago, we're half a year in there already, and it's coming fast. It's coming faster than any other technology.
Yeah. Great way to end this show. Rex, I could probably sit here and just talk to you for the next hour, but no one would listen to our podcast for 2 hours because no one hangs on that long. But thank you so much for joining us. What's that?
I said, raise your hand if you're not still here.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. If you're driving, at least leave one hand on the wheel. But thanks again for joining us. It's just an honor to work for you here at Academy, and you're a real inspiration to me, and appreciate the way you challenged me on result selling framework and how you continue to challenge me to take it to the next level. And I look forward to what this looks like, next year at this time. So, but yeah, thanks for being on the show and bringing your wisdom to the viewers. I appreciate that.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Rex. What a great episode, just from a standpoint, just having that conversation. It's most like kind of sitting around a campfire, chit-chatting about, years in technology and the MSP space. It's just really good just to pick Rex's brain around the things that he coaches, teaches, and has learned from our industry, right? We started really the concept was, hey, let's talk about industry events, but the conversation went in different directions, which is fantastic. I hope you got value from it, learned something, got some takeaways from this. So when it came to industry events, I always had a plan before I went to the event. What challenges was I having with my MSP business, and what areas did I need to improve? So that way I was like, hey, can I go and talk to my peers? Can I talk to my vendor partners? Can I find out from sessions how to improve my company to solve those challenges? And then, I'd kind of absorb it, kind of have the plan for where I wanted to go. Rex brought it up. We talked about it. I'd bring my service manager so that way my service manager and I could divide and conquer. And then on my flight home, I just kind of came up with an action plan. Obviously, I took a nap because after an industry event, you're just wiped out. But I would sit down and just kind of scribble down action plan of like top 2 things I learned that I want to execute, what I want to implement and perfect and prioritize, if you will. This helped me make key changes and improvements to all areas of my MSP. So I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We're streaming Result Selling Framework podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. So make sure to like and subscribe and certainly listen and follow the Result Selling Framework podcast. We always have some sort of wisdom or tip of knowledge. I bring other people in to really seek what is good from growing your business and selling in the IT services world. Next month, I'll be joined by Pete Busam of Equilibrium Consulting, where we'll discuss the buyer's journey and buyer personas. So thanks for listening to Result Selling Framework. We'll see you next time.